This is a Radical Rant podcast. Hello everyone, welcome to the Hot Tag Podcast, episode number 4. Adam aka CSRadical here with you guys as always. And it is now official, the Hot Tag Podcast is all in on All Elite Wrestling. So I made the call after watching episode number 1 of All Elite Dynamite on Wednesday. I pretty much figured that, okay, my time for wrestling is so limited that, you know what, it's going to have to be a one or the other kind of thing here, and at the end of the day, I figure I gotta go with the product that's actually got my interest right now. So for the time being, for the foreseeable future, for at least whoever how long it goes, this is going to be specifically talking about what goes on with Dynamite every week, the pay-per-views. The only time we'll delve into other stuff is if there's some news, whether it's pertaining to WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, whatever it may be. But generally speaking, on this show, we are going to be talking about what All Elite is up to, because my time between anime, between gaming, between all the other stuff I do in my daily life, I've got about enough time to watch one show. You know, if I really wanted to, I could force it real hard to be able to catch NXT as well, but it's just, I can't do it without clearly pushing something else to the side, and that's why I came to the decision I am. So this is, for the time being, an All Elite Central podcast. So with that being said, episode number 1 of AEW Dynamite is in the books, and all in all, it was a good show. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that it was the best show I've ever seen. It's certainly not at the level of production that a WWE can put on. However, what we did see in this episode is that we do have a viable alternative to WWE. In the ratings, we saw that it was about 1.4 million to 891,000 between AEW and NXT, AEW coming out as the victor. So we at least know that at this point in time, in this first week, I should say, of the Wednesday Night Wars, AEW is on top. Now, what does that mean? Well, NXT is going to have to change. It inevitably will change now, because Vince will not take losing hand down. Like, he will not accept that they lost the first week without something happening in response. So a lot of people are under the understanding that NXT will probably, at some point, I imagine in the next 12 months, you'll see them make a move at a Full Sail if they want to keep this war going. Because AEW Dynamite compared to NXT every week from now on is going to look so much like the bigger show, because they're in a bigger arena. They'll have a louder reaction. And it seems like, just from the production value, it's a bigger show overall. So NXT is likely going to have to go through changes. Now, that's unfortunate, because NXT, I did manage to catch a bit of it. I caught the Adam Cole Matt Riddle match, and I've caught highlights of the show that you would see on YouTube. It still looks like it's a fantastic show, and from what I've heard with people that I talked to, the show was probably where the better wrestling stood, while AEW seemed to have the better overall show. That seems to be where most people are in agreement. So hopefully, NXT can continue to be what it is, because NXT being what it is at this current moment is why people at least can tune into WWE at some point and feel like they might get something out of it. Because as I watched Raw, and I certainly watched highlights from SmackDown, like, I don't know, one of the best World Championships runs we've had in a while, and in 10 seconds to a guy that no one wants to see anymore. Yeah, that definitely got, it definitely confirmed the decision that I made a few days ago by deciding to stick with All Elite Wrestling as my home for professional wrestling now. So with that being said, let's go through the entire show. I didn't get to catch this live, and most nights I probably won't be able to, but, you know, I'm really excited to have the alternative regardless. I did catch it on a VOD not long after, and like I said, the show itself was fine. It was good, and that's all it needed to be its first week. I wasn't expecting this to be a double or nothing level show. It's television. You don't give it away. NXT was a takeover essentially on Wednesday. AEW Dynamite was not. It was what probably is maybe a slightly accentuated normal show. Because you look at the matches on the card, it's not exactly overwhelming. I mean, yes, they had a title match and the first ever women's title match, which we'll get to later down the card. But the main event is what you expect. It's a 6-man tag. It's exactly what you expect from WWE. The only thing that on the side is really Pac and Adam Page, which is a pretty marquee match. But everything else on the card seems like your random episode of Raw or SmackDown. So all things considered, this show did exactly what you would expect it to do at the bare minimum. They showed you what the floor might look like. So it tells you that the ceiling to the show may be a lot higher than we think. Now, my only real complaint about the show at this point is that they went back to not playing the music through, whether it's an auxiliary channel so you can hear it clearly. You only heard what was in the arena. So if you wanted to hear Judas by Fozzy with Jericho's entrance, you couldn't really hear it very well. And that was disappointing. And I really hope that they decide to go in the direction of at least letting you hear the music a little bit better. I think I understand why they're doing what they're doing with it, because I imagine they're trying to find a sense of feeling like you're there, almost like when you listen to the Kiss Alive album, where you feel like you're actually there at the concert. I feel like they're trying to give you an audio representation of what it's like live. And if that's the case, that's cool and all, but especially in the early going when people were trying to figure out who's who, the entrance music is your first clue to who it is. Whether you're watching the TV or not, if you're looking away and you hear, let me go, let me go, let me go now, you're going to know exactly that is Jericho. But because I straight up didn't hear it. So my brain thought, okay, they need to put it back in an aux channel. They definitely need to do that. That was really my only complaint. Immediate couple takeaways before we get into the card itself. I love the fact that the show barely had any promos. It didn't open up with a 10-minute promo. It didn't have a bunch of random skits in the background. I'm hoping that what their idea is that you concentrate on the wrestling on Dynamite. And if you want to do things like skits and promos, they can still use Being the Elite and the YouTube channel to cover that stuff too. Not to mention, I'm surprised we haven't seen it yet, but we were supposed to see a sideshow, whether it's on Fight or they were going to post on YouTube, that was going to be all the dark matches that they had at the event, which I really wish I could see, because I want to see some of these guys as well that we won't get to see very often. But at the very least, if they're going to spend, if this is about the ratio between wrestling and promo time that we're going to get on these shows, I'm okay with that. Because unless it's something really pertinent to a storyline, there's no need to have excessive promo time. If it's something big, especially on a go-home show to a pay-per-view, then you can make use of it. But on a random night, I don't want to see somebody talking for 10 minutes. I don't think it means anything. You know, MJF came out for about a minute before his match and cut a bit of a promo, which was fine. You had a little tiny interview with Cody after the match with Guevara, and you know, that was fine. You had the little Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes thing. That was also fine. It was quick. And I'll get into all these things as we go down the card. But most importantly, it's just you didn't spend the entire show waiting for another match to happen. It's not like an episode of Raw where you can go almost a half an hour without ever seeing wrestling. This show made it very clear that they're going to focus on wrestling. And if that's what they're going to do, that already makes them a very heavy alternative to WWE. So other than that, the announcing was still solid. I was really happy with Tony Schiavone the most. Really, I didn't get the chance to watch a lot of WCW back in the day. I was only, 9, 10, 11 years old in that heyday of the Monday Night War. And because of that, I didn't really get a chance to watch a lot of wrestling. I only started getting into wrestling around the time the Monday Night War started, because I started seeing old VHS tapes of, believe it or not, my first ever intro to wrestling was WrestleMania 9. I'm pretty sure I've said this on the podcast before, but just in case people are coming into this fresh, WrestleMania 9 is the literal first thing I ever saw in terms of wrestling. And I'm still here. I know, it's amazing. But around the Monday Night Wars, I maybe caught a Raw once in a blue moon, because I go to bed around the same time that it would. So I'd be sneaking upstairs to my dad's bedroom, and he'd let me watch for a little while until Mom inevitably came upstairs and I rushed back to my room. So I didn't get to watch a lot of wrestling back in those days. I eventually would get to see a couple pay-per-views here and there, but generally speaking, I didn't get to watch a lot of it. So seeing highlights from Nitro now much in the future, and seeing Schiavone then, and you remember him for stuff like, oh, that'll put a lot of butts in seats kind of comments. To be able to hear him calling a full show without any of that bullshit, for the first time, honestly, a full show, meant a whole lot, and I really understood why so many people were attached to Nitro back in the day, because he was fantastic. So other than that, let's actually get into the card. So we opened up with Cody versus Sammy Guevara. This was actually a very good match, and I think the whole point of it was to get Sammy over for obvious later things that happened down the show. But for the time being, Sammy definitely put himself over very well. He got a lot of offense in. He looked like a upcoming star. That's what he looked like. He looked like somebody that you take the panda costume away, which is, admittedly, as much as I like the guy, it's still a little ridiculous. He's a guy that, just like you look with a guy like Adam Page or an MJF, there are a lot of guys out there that you can see today on AEW Dynamite and look at and see 2-3 years down the road, you're going to be where Kenny Omega stands, where Pac stands, where Chris Jericho stands. And you can see it. And this was the first time that I actually had that look on Guevara. I looked at somebody that thought, man, this guy can be a real shit-eating grin kind of heel. Or, because of his look, he can be a hell of a babyface that the girls will get behind. You know, you think of guys like Jeff Hardy and Finn Balor. Guevara's got the Bieber face going on there, so he can either be a giant dick or somebody the girls are going to get way attached to. So either way, he's got a future. So he definitely got over in this match. He had a lot of near falls. He had a few little hiccups here and there. There were a couple of times that he kind of shook a little bit on the dismounts whenever he was like landing on his feet from moonsaults or whatever. But he still got a lot of good stuff in. He got his... So he did this spot where he went to moonsault Cody. Cody moved. He landed on his feet, moonsaulted again, still missed, and then finally shooting star press. That was pretty cool. He also got over as a heel very well in this match because during it, he pulls Brandy next to him when Cody goes to do a suicide dive out of the ring. Brandy takes a pretty good bump too. And that's a very good way to get him a lot of heat. And I know a lot of people said, on Reddit I saw it a lot, that that's the kind of thing that he shouldn't have been doing his first match in. I disagree. I think if you want to establish Sammy right away, and especially what we saw at the end of the night where he needed to be there, it definitely got him over in a good spot. And it gives him an immediate rivalry with Cody now that, you know, because I'm assuming he's going to lose to Jericho at a Full Gear. You get Guevara in there to be a nice, you know, piece of shit in his way, basically. But either way, after all that, Cody eventually gets the win. After Brandy slaps Guevara, he hits the disaster kick and then eventually rolls Sammy up. I'm surprised the crossroads didn't have to get used, but either way, it was a good match. I'm not going to Meltzer star these things. It's just not my thing. I can't take that gimmick away. I had a funny thought in my head. You know what? I'm going to put a bit of an aside here. I saw not too long ago people being like, man, do you think AEW is going to have an authoritative figure? And I said, no way. Unless you go full retard with it. So I'm literally yesterday as I was driving home from work, I had this weird idea in my head. It's like, man, make Dave Meltzer the authoritative figure of AEW and give him the gimmick. And I'm just being fully joking here. Give him the full gimmick of that. He's not being an asshole and burying guys, but he's doing what he thinks is best for the show in his mind. So he's trying to form all these 5-star matches. He calls himself the 5-star GM. And, you know, there are certain guys that just never get matches, and they keep saying, let me in. And he goes, I can't. You're a 3-star. A 3-star. How could I? I thought about that, and I just started giggling to myself because I'm like, man, that would be so stupid, and I think it would work. But to tie all that back in, I'm not going to Meltzer star stuff because it's a gimmick that I don't think I should tread on. So, you know, I'll just say it was a good match. Thumbs up. That's about it. Next up on the card, we had MJF against Brandon Cutler. Cutler definitely looked like somebody who still has to get some rust off of him. And if he ends up just being a job guy, then it is what it is. I mean, he's a guy the fans are endearing, so it's somebody that can lose and people get a little bit upset at the heel for. And that's exactly what happened here. So MJF, like I said earlier, came out, cut a bit of a promo on Cutler before the match. Cutler tried to get a little bit of offense in, but it really wasn't doing too much. MJF was definitely looking like the bigger guy here. By the end of the match, MJF does beat Brandon Cutler with the Salt of the Earth. I'm not sure if this was meant to happen or not. Cutler came off the turnbuckle, and when he landed on his feet, or no, he didn't. I don't think he landed. I think he actually like tripped a little bit on the turnbuckle and fell down, and he made it look like he tweaked his knee. I don't know if that was legit or not, and I haven't heard if he's injured yet. So I'm tempted to believe at this point, because this is now Saturday after the first episode of Dynamite I'm recording this, so I'm led to believe that this was meant to happen. So Cutler feigns an injury, makes it look like, that his knee buckled or something, and then MJF just quickly takes him down, puts him in the solid earth, and that's it, because he'd been working on the arm a little bit as well. Obviously, that does what it is. That was a nothing match. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was a bad match. It wasn't a great match either. It was just, the whole point of it was to get MJF over as a heel to all these new people that are coming into the show. We all know that he's a piece of shit, but now they know he's a piece of shit. So that was it. After that, we cut to... Oh, sorry, I forgot. After the Cody Guevara match, Jericho actually attacked Cody after the bell. Same kind of stuff you'd expect. Guevara kind of backed off, which definitely made me think that there was some cahoots going on here, and it eventually did pay off at the end. But yeah, Jericho basically, just being the piece of shit he is right now, he attacked Cody after the bell, and after all, they're setting up for Full Gear. So otherwise, that was the only thing I forgot there. So moving back to where we were, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes suddenly made an appearance with Chris Van Vliet interviewing them. It seemed to be mostly a advertisement for the reboot of Jay and Silent Bob, which I can't wait to see. But they did pull a little bit of a potential rivalry, as Angelico and Jack Evans came out and interrupted them, said a few things. I don't really remember what they said. It didn't really come off that great. I'm kind of disappointed with how they're going, first of all. I think they can be a lot better. But, you look at the tag team division right now, there's a lot of names. So somebody's going to get pushed to the back. And it seems like at this point, Angelico and Jack Evans are the team that's probably getting pushed back the most. And... you just give it time. They'll eventually get something going. But it seems like they've set something up with Private Party, because during them going nuts against Smith and Mewes, almost seemed like they're trying to get Smith and Mewes into a match, which, please no. Smith's already dealt with one near-death experience. So Private Party suddenly come out and just kind of shoo them off. Nothing really comes out of it. It makes you wonder, because Private Party will be facing the Young Bucks in the first round of the tag team tournament next week, that Angelico and Evans might get involved. Or at the very least, if Private Party lose, which I assume they will, but you never know, given the way this tournament's going, they might just interrupt during the match or even after the match. So we'll see how that turns out. But, it's just a segment to set something up, and really the only real aside we had during this entire time. You had a bit of a video promo afterwards with SCU. Scorpio Sky had a fucking perfect Obama impression going on there with Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian acting as Secret Service. I love that. That was awesome. Then they cut away to the stage where Shivani's with the three. We find out that Scorpio Sky has volunteered himself to not be part of the tag team tournament, so it will be Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, which I think is the right choice. A lot of people are going to be more likely to know those two than they will Scorpio Sky. Not to mention, it does make it seem like they're going with experience, which does make sense. So that all makes perfect sense. And I can't pick two better guys in there. I love all three of them, but man, I'm not gonna lie. If Daniels was the odd one out, I would have been pissed, because I love me some Fallen Angel. But during that little interview with Shivani, the Lucha Brothers interrupt, do the whole Cero Miedo thing. I wish, because I know that there are going to be a lot of people that watch the show that don't speak Spanish or don't understand. They should have had promos with these guys to at least tell you that he thinks in zero fear. That's what it means. And because of that, I think some people are going to look at what he said and not understand what he said. So that could have been thought a little bit better. Whether he just wrote a shirt, even if he just had a shirt on that just said zero fear, like Cero Miedo was zero fear as like a shadow or something like that, like something cool that could at least give people the impression, oh, that's what that means. But instead, he says his catchphrase, and a lot of people are going to have no fucking clue what he's talking about. But they start brawling a bit. You see a bunch of the guys come out, like Dean Malenko, to help get, keep the peace here, and that's how that ends. I believe the tag team tournament, are they actually facing in the first round? I cannot remember. I want to think that that's what it was. So I'm going to quickly check Wikipedia here since I thankfully have enough time. No, actually, it will be SoCal, Uncensored, and Best Friends leading into the Dark Order buys. So it almost makes me wonder now because of that. You think you might be seeing SCU and Lucha Brothers in the final? Is that potentially possible? So you know what? Since we are talking about the Tag Team Championship, let's actually go through the tournament bracket. So the Dark Order obviously is getting the bye. The other quarterfinal in their section is, like I said, the Best Friends and SoCal Uncensored. The other half of the bracket is the Young Bucks versus Private Party and the Lucha Brothers versus Jurassic Express, that being Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. So the way that I see it playing out, this is my personal opinion, and this is going without seeing the show. This is where I stood before the first episode of Dynamite came. I thought, full disclosure, that it was going to be Jurassic Express and Dark Order in the final. That was my expectation. Because I looked at how people reacted to Luchasaurus over these last 4 pay-per-views before we got to television. And there is no doubt in my mind that those guys are over. We already have Chris Jericho as champion. I don't think you need a bunch of heels holding the belts. Obviously, as we find out with the women's title, that's not the case. I think with the tag belts, you want to have something cool to start it off with. So Dark Order, as much as I love me some Super Smash Brothers, some Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, I love those guys, they're not the right pick. It just doesn't make sense. You know, these guys are already in a little bit of trouble as it is. Fans are not connecting to them very well, which is depressing to me. I think it's the gimmick more than the people in the ring. But I wouldn't want to make it even easier for that ship to capsize if by making them champions right away and people do not take to that well. So, in my opinion, it should be Dark Order and Jurassic Express, with Jurassic Express winning. Now, with this little thing going on between SCU and Lucha Brothers, it does make you wonder if that's going to be the final. And if that's the case, I would still prefer that SCU comes out the winner. And the reason for that is because it is way too obvious that the Bucks or the Lucha Brothers would win, because on paper they should. You know, just like on paper, you would have thought Kenny Omega would have been the first champion. And just like on paper, as we'll get into the match soon, you would think Nyla Rose was the champion, but that's not what happened. So I figured that there was going to be really 2 options to me. I love Private Party, but they're not there yet. I love the Best Friends, but I think they're kind of there to be just the fun tag team. I don't think that they're the first champions. So in my head, I only had 2 options because I don't think the Dark Order's in a good spot to be the first champs either. It was either going to be Jurassic Express or SCU. So if it's not Jurassic Express in the bracket that I think it's going to go, and it ends up actually being the Lucha Brothers and SoCal Uncensored in the final, then it should be SCU to win it. And because they have the attention with the crowd, it definitely can work to their advantage, and I think that they can be a very good tag team to start off the illustrious tag team titles. Because this tag division is fantastic, and Helico and Jack Evans aren't even in this thing. Santana Ortiz, the former LAX and Impact, are not even in this tournament. There's still possibilities of more guys that fall into this bracket, but they're not there yet. We haven't seen them yet, or we have seen them yet to be created. So at this point, the tag team division looks sick. You have 9 teams, at least that I can think of right now, that are all fantastic. About half of them you can see today as tag team champions, and the other half, give them a little time and they can do just the same. So that's where I stand on that. So let's move on to the next thing, which was Pac and Adam Page. This was not as good as the match that I saw that AEW posted from that independent show in the UK. I can't remember for the life of me what the promotion was. That was the one where Pac lost by DQ. That's how Adam Page ended up kind of getting the spot against Jericho. I know that he had to win the Battle Royal, but I think the intent all along was that. I've heard the opposite, that it was supposed to be Pac and Omega to start it. I don't know. I haven't heard if that was verified, if that was actually true. But either way, that's how it led. This match was still good. It was still very good. It's probably Page's best match, actually. I think he still had a lot of nerves with Jericho. I think this match was definitely a little bit more complete. But in the end, the match didn't impress as much as the independent one, and I think that could have been due to time constraints with the show. Also, maybe a little bit of jitters from it being the first TV show, who knows. It was still a very good match. Paige had a chance to get very close to the win. He goes to hit whatever the clothesline that he does where he like slingshots himself over the ropes to do it. I think there's an actual name for it and I just can't remember what it was. He goes to try to hit it. Pac ducks and he nearly decks the ref, so he stops. In doing so, Pac ends up low blowing Paige, and that leads to a Black Arrow and the Brutalizer to finish it. So Pac wins his second match. He is now still undefeated at 2-0. He's now beaten Paige and Omega, which ideally you would think that if Cody actually beats Jericho, which I don't think he will, Pac would be next in line. You would think. So that sets that possibility up. I mean, I still don't think it's going to be like that. I think it would be too early to have Jericho's reign end. I feel like, personally, assuming that what we heard about Double or Nothing being one of the consistent shows that they're going to do quarterly, I would have Jericho keep that belt all the way to Double or Nothing. So I really hope that they don't quickly throw the belt to Cody just for that moment, and that you get a little bit more out of Jericho and you can create a lot of other rivalries. But I mean, we'll see what happens as it goes. We're still at least a month and change away from that. But yeah, the match itself was fine. I didn't have any issues with it. Just, I saw the indie match, and the indie match was a little bit better. That's the only real comment I got. Second last from the card, we had the first ever AEW Women's Championship match with Riho and Nyla Rose. So you obviously understand that Riho won this because I just mentioned it earlier with Nyla not winning. I made my comments on the last show, I believe, about how I thought this was a very bad match to have as your first title match. And I still stand by that. The match was better than I thought it was going to be, but it still was a very piss-poor David versus Goliath story. And personally, if you were going to have Riho as champion, Nyla should have been the last opponent for her. You should have had somebody more her size, so it could have been a more competitive match, and you get the sense that Riho can go. When you spend most of the match getting manhandled and only getting a few flurries of offense in that look like punches that aren't hurting her, it doesn't make you look like a very credible champion. I'm not saying Riho isn't a champion. I actually have watched Riho in Joshi wrestling and have seen that she can go. But if she can go against some of these people, why not get somebody more at her pace for that first match? If you want to do Nyla, you can do it later. You didn't have to do it first. I still fully believe that Britt Baker should have won that Rumble, and that would have been a great opponent for Riho, because it would have been something more that she could have worked with. But that's not how it worked. Speaking of Britt Baker, she was at the commentary during this match, and she didn't look like she wanted to be there, which was strange. I don't know if that was on purpose because she was just pissed off she wasn't in the match, or if she legitimately, not kayfabe, real didn't want to be here. I don't know. But that didn't go very well. The match itself also had a few stupid bits in it. Nyla grabbed a chair very quickly into the match, which is really dumb, because if you want to be champion, why the fuck would you grab a chair? So the ref stops that, but she grabs a bunch more chairs, puts them outside, lays Riho down there. And I think this was after that really nice spot where Riho went to do a crossbody from the top rope to the outside. Nyla caught her and did a backbreaker. I think it was around this point. So Nyla lays out Riho on the chairs, goes to do a rolling senton from the apron, and Riho moves. That didn't look like it felt very good. But, I mean, again, it was a stupid spot, personally. I don't think it belonged there, especially in a championship match where you're trying. I know she's supposed to be the Beast, but the Beast even should be smart enough to know that you shouldn't have fucking done that. So that didn't come off very well. There was also a spot where Riho did a Avalanche Northern Lights suplex to Nyla Rose, and that also didn't seem like it made any sense, because, I mean, Riho shouldn't be able to get that much weight above her like that. I mean, I guess you could use gravity from being on the top rope, maybe, but I don't know. This entire match felt like they were trying a little bit too hard to make Riho look like she was stronger than what she was against Nyla. But in the end, Nyla ends up, I think it was after the Northern Lights, there was a near fall, and then Riho just gave her a couple of double knee strikes. And that was it. Riho is your first AEW champion. And the match was fine. The crowd seemed to get really into it by the end. From all accounts from people that were in the arena, people were way behind her. So that's good. That's a very good thing to have as your first women's champion then, because if the fans really like her, then you're in good shape. But again, I fully believe that if you wanted to have her as champion, you needed to get a better opponent for her. Because, and I don't like that I'm having to say this, but because they had Riho go over Nyla Rose to be the first champion, that type of selection makes me think I don't think it's for sure, but it makes me consider the idea that this is only happening because Kenny really likes Riho. I know that Kenny is a big part of this division, and my worry is that some favoritism got into the politics of this match. Because like I said, there is no reason Nyla should lose this match. If this is the match we're getting on paper to be the first champion, Nyla has already fucked up enough that she shouldn't fail again. And I know that after the match, she attacked Riho. Kenny had to come out for the save, so it can make it seem like Nyla really is this big threat. But the big threat has now been made to look like a fool several times. She's lost every significant match aside from the Battle Royal. That's not good for a monster. So they haven't done the best job of putting her around. If there's anything that I'm gonna chastise the guys for, this is it, because you've made who's supposed to be your monster in this division look like a bitch because she's now lost to not only two tiny girls in Yuka Sakazaki and Riho at Fight for the Fallen, but now she's lost to Riho straight up. That's not good. If that's the kind of monster heel you're going for, she's not doing a great job. That's all I got to say about that. But yeah, she did try to attack Riho after. She actually powerbombed the shit out of Michael Nakazawa, who is going to interview Riho in Japanese after she won, but that was interrupted. Kenny did come out. I don't feel like they're teasing anything between the two of them. I think intergender wrestling, at least from what I've heard in various interviews, that's not something they're looking to go after, at least not at this point. I think they'd rather establish their guys first before getting into that point. But as a whole, the match was okay. This is probably the one match in the card that I had a few issues with. But other than that, I mean, it still did its job. You got your champion over, and you've got the monster still fresh in people's minds. So I guess in the end that still works. But man, I really hope that they really do a little bit better with it, because this women's division needs to be the catalyst to AEW success, because the tag team division is something that people only on the fringes will care about. If you want that mainstream audience, you need to make sure that it's the must-see place for women's wrestling. NXT has been doing a very good job of that, and they've got some of the best talent out there in Io Shirai, Shayna Baszler, folks like that. They could even throw Asuka and Kairi Sane and all those down there if they really wanted to. So for the time being, the floor is open for you guys to really take advantage of that, and you need to do that, because in my opinion, I feel like this division is the one that's going to make or break you in terms of really taking a crack at catching up to WWE. This division, because you can have as good wrestling as you want with the men. That's very easy to do. There's a lot of guys in the independents that can pull this off. The women, though, you need to really go ham on that, and I thought that getting all the Joshis was going to be a fantastic way to do that. But so far, aside from really the Joshi 6-man, basically the stuff with Double or Nothing, and I'm now thinking in the back of my mind, I don't think the Sakazaki, Riho, and Nyla triple threat was Fight for the Fallen. It might have been Fyter Fest. Either way, wherever that match was from, that's the only other one that I've really watched in terms of the women's stuff that was actually really good. Everything else has been kind of meh. So you need to really take a good look at this division and really start to push something forward that can make a much better product, because so far, it really has a lot of room for improvement. But I know it's early, so they've got time. Last but not least, we got the main event. So Chris Jericho and Santana Ortiz going up against the Elite, that being Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Right off the bat, there's a little bit going on. Jericho plays some mind games. We think he's gonna start with Omega. He quickly tags back in. I don't know Santana Ortiz well enough to know who's who yet. It's going to take me a couple of shows. But not very long into the match, Moxley came in and took Omega out. Now, my question is, why isn't that a DQ? I think they tried to explain it by saying, well, Omega wasn't the legal man at the time, so that's probably why. I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but whatever. They go and brawl around the ring. They eventually go to the back. They go into this VIP area, and I say that in quotations. And Moxley hits, I believe it's the Knight Rider, or the Death Rider, something like. I think, yeah, you know what? I think it's the Death Rider. Knight Rider is a fucking David Hasselhoff show. But he hits that double arm DDT that's formerly known as the Dirty Deeds, but he puts him a little bit higher up in the air and hits it, obviously to protect Omega, because he put him through a glass table. Now, I am very sure that From looking at it a couple of times, I'm pretty sure that Omega took almost nothing of it. It looked like Moxley took the most of it. Because, I mean, head first into glass probably isn't the best idea. But that took that out. So it was 3-on-2 for the rest of it. The Bucks did their best, but in the end, Jericho hits the Judas effect, and that does it. So they keep attacking the Bucks after the bell, so Cody runs out to try to even things out. That's when the aforementioned Sammy Guevara comes back in. He low blows Cody with a real good kick to the nuts. Then Dustin comes out, Dustin Rhodes for that matter. He comes out, delivers a little low blow of his own to Sammy, but Jake Hager, the formerly Jack Swagger, comes out to finish it. He takes out everybody, and it looks like we have a 5-man stable. So, obviously Hager being the powerhouse, Ortiz and Santana being like the dirty guys that, kind of dig in there and really fuck guys up, backstage, that kind of stuff. And then you got Guevara as like the Randy Orton of Evolution kind of deal, like he's the young protege. That's how it looks. I made the comment a while ago. Actually, you know what? I'll get to this after I say one last thing. So, when Hager came out, he actually got a pretty good reaction. I was surprised by that because I got spoiled on this part because I didn't catch this live, like I said. I got spoiled on it and I said, really? Hager? I'm like, I mean, that's kind of cool to see him get a good crack at it because you never know, AEW might be able to actually do something with the guy. They might actually put him in the right spot. Looks like they are because it looks like he's going to be the muscle for Jericho, which is actually a pretty nice spot for him. He's a big guy. But after the whole beatdown was over and the camera was on him, he got a lot of cheers, and Hager almost looked like lost. He had these like weird looks, like he was kind of staring around looking confused. I think he was genuinely shocked that he was being cheered because I think he thought probably of two things. One, I'm supposed to be the heel, and two, I haven't really been looked at that fondly since I left WWE. So I think he was kind of surprised that he got the reaction he did. So anyways, I cannot remember if I said this on the podcast yet. My idea before the television show started was I thought, because I heard that the trademark for the Four Horsemen was not claimed by WWE, I thought, what if you had a Four Horsemen with Jericho as one of the leads, like Jericho playing the Flair, and you have, say, MJF in there, you have maybe a young guy, which turns out like Sammy Guevara is that guy, and then you throw one more guy in there, which could have been Hager. Instead, you're getting a 5-man team. We don't know if this team is going to have a name, but you have Chris Jericho, you have Sammy Guevara, who ends up being the protege. Now you have Hager as the muscle guy. I didn't have him penciled in for because I didn't think he was going to be here. Full disclosure, I had no expectation that Jake Hager was ever going to be on the show. I didn't think he would be. I didn't think he was a guy that would have been on AEW's radar personally. The fact that he is tells me that they see something that they can do with him that I didn't. So that intrigues me. But lastly, you have Santana and Ortiz. So you have this very interesting group of guys, which makes you wonder who's going to be back to take this. And I think the answer is very obvious. You have the Elite, you have the Bucks, and you have Kenny. Kenny might be busy with Moxley, though. So what if Kenny's out? Well, there's a pretty quick solution to that problem that will probably be ready by Full Gear. So you have at this point the Bucks for sure. You'll have Cody because he's already feuding with Jericho. And you have Dustin, who took a shot at Sammy, so you never know. It might be Dustin and Sammy. And then you got the Bucks against Santana and Ortiz. So that leaves Hager. Who can go in that spot? Who's missing? Well, we clearly know that somebody's friends are indeed alive. And as far as we know, Marty Scurll's contract in ROH is up in November, I believe, or late October. So Full Gear will come around, and Marty will be free. Not to mention, AEW does follow Marty Scurll. And they have casually mentioned him now. The Bucks, I should say, the Elite. I think we will see Marty Scurll make his debut at Full Gear to help even out the odds. That's what I think is going to happen. Whether this makes into a faction war, maybe we actually see something like a War Games, who knows? But I think that's where we're going. Now, the real question is, what's coming up? What's coming up with Cody and Jericho? I fully believe that we will see Jericho retain. I feel like that has to be what it is. That's what it just has to be, right? It doesn't make sense to have your new champion lose his first defense. It doesn't feel like it makes any sense. So with that being said, with everything else going on, who knows? I imagine that the tag team tournament will become into full swing because I was literally just looking at stuff here. I did see that AEW Dark, which is all the dark matches, will air on Tuesdays on AEW's channel. So next week we probably should see all the dark matches from the last taping. I just randomly came across that because I was trying to find what next week's show has listed. I know that we have Private Party in the Bucks for sure, and I want to say Moxley has a match, but I just can't remember who it's against. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. No, it's not Janela. Either way, we'll get to that another time. But obviously, Santana Ortiz it's going to be one or the other. Angelico and Evans are going to stop Private Party from winning their match, or Santana Ortiz are going to keep the Bucks from winning against Private Party. That's what I figure at this point. So you're going to see those guys get involved. Hager is kind of the odd one out. He might even not even have a match with anybody because he'll just be busy, keeping people from getting to Jericho. I imagine, like I said, Dustin and Guevara will go up against each other. So you have some interesting matches that are coming in. You can have the young upstart Guevara going up against the old veteran and Dustin Rose. Like, that's a pretty interesting match right there. So that's a pretty good start. And with all the other things going on in the background, you have a lot that you can take from. So that was the entire show. Again, there are a lot of names that we still don't know are going to debut on or in AEW for that matter. And the question is who, and I'm not sure. Apparently, we've only seen maybe just over half the women. I really hope that Tenille is going to be one of them. I think she's a great addition that they should have. Seeing Mercedes Martinez as the Joker tells me that they better have signed her because the fact that WWE never did is a fucking travesty. So I hope that they go all in on her, for lack of a better pun, I guess. But yeah, there's some intrigue coming in there. As for the guys, like I sat down with some friends. We were talking about, like, who could they actually bring in? And obviously a guy like Hager tells me that I got no fucking clue who can come in. I mean, there's a lot of guys I would like to see, but at this point, sorry about the extra noise there. I accidentally banged the wall. I'm recording in the closet, by the way, because it's the only place where I can not bounce a shit ton of sound off of. I finally moved into here to just do more of these podcast recordings because, I'm planning on getting some acoustic foam at some point, but the guest bedroom that I record in right now, it's way too echoey, and I hate it. So I finally moved in here to try to get a better sound coming out of it. So I'm very close to the wall, so it doesn't take much to tap something. I'm amazed it took me this long to do it once. There are a lot of guys that you could see, and I couldn't tell you where to start. I honestly couldn't. There's so many guys out there. I mean, the only one that I really hope that we see is if New Japan puts Shota Umino on an excursion, have him stick with Moxley and AEW. That'd be a cool thing. But otherwise, like, I couldn't tell you guys that I guarantee you I want to see. Like, I don't know enough about a lot of the American indies to give you a good sense. And a lot of the guys that I see, I just figure NXT is going to gobble up too. So it's tough. But at this point in time, we're seeing a roster that is very well built, that has a lot of variation to it. And at the end of the day, after seeing this first episode, this has been exactly what I never thought would happen. I truly believed for a long time now that we were never going to see somebody get to the level that TNA almost did. When it was in the heyday of Christian Cage, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, all those guys. In that heyday was the closest we ever got to an alternative to WWE. And I wasn't even really into wrestling that much to enjoy that. That was around the dark period of the Cena reign that I just didn't care anymore. Now, I'm more into wrestling than I may ever have been. And now there's a legitimate number 2. A 1.4 million rating. Despite what anybody says, that's a number 2 show, without question. Now, the real question to be asking is, what does week 2 hold? Because you have to think there's going to be drop-off. People are going to have tried it for the first time, think, I think I'm not into wrestling. Or just people being like, I was hoping for something different. You know what? I'm just going to stick with WWE. If they do better than their rating next week, that tells you we've got something here. If they drop off a little bit, then it is what it is. It's what you assume it's going to happen. If they have a major drop-off, then you start worrying. I don't think it'll be a major drop-off. If there is a drop-off, it will be small. It will be like, let's say, worst case scenario 1.2, I think. That's where I personally stand. But if they gain at all, if they get over 1.5, oh boy, we're going to start having some interesting conversations, especially if that second show is just as good as this one was. But regardless of all that stuff, all that's important right now is I'm excited. For the first time in a while, I'm looking forward to a weekly television show. I honestly cannot tell you the last time I even watched a full episode of Raw or SmackDown, let alone 2 in a row. I honestly can't tell you. That's how long it's been. So for me to guarantee myself that I'm going to watch Dynamite next Wednesday is huge. That is the ultimate important thing to remember in all of this for me. That I actually have a show I want to watch. And that is everything I could possibly ask for. It may not have the most money into the production. It may not have the literal top talent because they don't have all of it. It may not even have the best matches than the other show that's running on the same night. But after the first week of AEW Dynamite, the one thought crossing through my head is I finally have another place to go. And that is all I ever wanted. So, with that being said, we're going to do it and cut this sucker off for the rest of the whatever day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it may be for you guys. So that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. So thank you very much for listening or watching this podcast, whether you're here on whatever audio platform that you're listening to this on or watching it on YouTube, as I'm now doing all my podcasts on both. So if you are looking for more content, the Radical Rant podcasts are not limited to just the hot tag. I am putting all of my solo stuff into one big thing here. So if you're an anime guy, you might be interested in the Church of Weeb, which will not be up on audio form until I start the reviews for the fall anime season. So that will be coming in a couple more weeks. The Radical Rants, if they ever get to fruition again, because the podcasts themselves are done. I've already mentioned that before in a video on my channel. The gaming-related stuff is only going to come from the VCR podcast, which I do with my buddies, which you can see at anchor.fm/VCR podcast, which are available on a few platforms. We're still waiting for a couple to come in. But that's where all my gaming stuff will come from. The only way that you'll see gaming stuff from me solo is if it's issues big enough that I just want to rant about, which, because I mean, the podcast thing it wasn't working out for a while. So that's been cut. But that, if I ever do make Radical Rants for gaming purposes, they will show up there as well. I don't know what the address is for it yet. I'm assuming it's going to be anchor.fm/Radical Rants, but I haven't seen if that's taken or not yet, and I haven't set that up. I'm literally recording this before I do all this, so obviously you'll know if you come from there afterwards. So if you are here on the YouTube channel, please like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content. Don't forget to leave comments below, and that includes any other audio services you're using. If you can comment or leave a positive rating, please do so as well. And you can also follow me on Twitter at CSRadical and Instagram at CS-Radical, as I'm finally back on there, much to my dismay, but my VCR co-host decided to force me into that. So with that being said, guys, thank you very much for enjoying this podcast, as you must be if you're still here. Then again, we are wrestling fans, so we are kind of masochistic in nature, so who knows, maybe you're just listening to the train wreck because that's your thing. But with that being said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope next week of Dynamite ends up being just what I hope it will be. I really am happy that I'm looking forward to a show all over again. So, when we see the next episode of Dynamite, I will be back with you guys not long after that. So, I will see you then.